Hey, Mike. Hey, listeners. Welcome to another fabulous episode of Coach's Corner. With me, as always, is my co-host and counterpart, Mike Lamb of Focal Point Business Coaching of Cary. And as always, I am Adam Gabe of, oh, wait a second. I said Cary. You're Utah,
Yeah, you
man.
could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Hey,
it,
I'll come take over Carrie for you if you need me
and
to.
I am Adam Gabe still,
You-
Focal Point Business Coaching of Cary. So now that we've had our blooper session, we're just going to keep going. So, Mike, we don't have a guest today, and I really just kind of want to do something a little different. I'm kind of excited because you know how after every episode we ask, "Hey, there's topics, things people you want to know about? Please let us know." Right? Well, I got one. And so people are really interested in understanding how we aid clients with growth and specifically revenue growth. So what I was hoping to do today, Mike, is kind of just talk through what we do from a strategy, from an implementation, and more importantly, from a dynamic standpoint of how we help clients get to an understanding, a baseline of where they are financially, and then what levers do we kind of pull and press, little levers, buttons, and more importantly, what are the outcomes that we kind of look for in terms of helping clients grow revenue? Sound good?
Yeah, I love this topic. We've talked a lot about know yourself
Yeah.
in
Yep.
our conversations, and this is know your business, really. So it's kind of fun to get into a little more of the nuts and bolts, which the finances are of a business and
Of course.
profitability and how we get involved and not necessarily do the work for them, but help them identify these things, these results indicators,
Yeah.
that
Well,
in the financial results indicators.
let's start right there. I don't know about you, but I very often talk about KPIs and KRIs. And the very first question I get is, what are they? Right?
Yeah.
Key performance indicators, key result indicators. They're massively huge. So let's just back up a sec. When you get the proverbial question of, what are you looking to get out of coaching? And your client looks at you and says, I really want to grow and I want to double revenue in X time frame. What goes through your mind and how do you respond to
There's a lot of answers to that is what goes through my head. Is
that?
I need to know more. In that, and we discussed this a little bit, but I need to know about your revenue streams. So we need to identify those. We need to identify your profitability of those revenue streams. Let's identify your customers. What your average customer and your average sale are. There's a lot of things that you can get into, but we need information.
Yeah.
And asking a lot of questions is where that kind of leads me. Um, because there is a lot. And are they collecting even the information in the first
Uh,
place?
and typically, let's be honest, the answer is probably not. So,
Yeah.
to recap, we always start with things like know yourself, know your business. That kind of gives us our framework, right? Our baseline of understanding who you are, what you do, and from that we get into our goal setting. We talked about that a little bit last week, and actually some of that the week before. So once we get that kind of understanding of where that client is there a particular principle or something that you walk through with that client to kind of help articulate and get that baseline for all of those knobs and levers that we can kind of change and
Yeah,
manipulate?
I mean, it's a topic or something that we talk about, or principle we talk about a lot because Brian Tracy, Focal Point creator, wrote another book called The Way to Wealth and
Sure.
the Way to Wealth
Yep.
Formula. And there are levers that you can adjust and move that can move the needle on profitability.
How many levers
And
are there?
there's six
Six.
that we
All right.
discuss. Yeah.
So you know what?
Um,
This is great. Why don't we just walk through them and let's
yeah.
articulate them, right?
Yeah. What's
First
the
one,
first one?
go for it.
uh, it's the leads that are
Yeah.
coming in. So from going from just a potential or a prospect or a suspect to a lead.
And
So
so is that really
how
talking
are we
about just getting
converting those?
more eyes on the business, on the product, on the service, getting more heads, feet in the door? Is it
Yeah,
that simple,
yeah,
right?
it's
And
that
so
simple. It's the number of leads that are coming in the door, or if we're at a trade show, the number of people we talk to, or the number of suspects that we get from a list. I'm not certain where everyone's getting their leads. It comes differently for every industry, but
Right.
it's the number of ideal customers that are coming through the door or coming through the computer emails or wherever you're getting your leads.
So the first thing that I think of when we start talking about headcount, leads, volume, et cetera, is, I try to understand their marketing strategy. Because if you don't understand how they're attracting clients, well, let's back up. First of all, you have to know exactly who their ideal client is, right?
Yeah,
Step one.
yeah. That's
Um,
very number one step is
right.
knowing your customers and
That
knowing who
once
your
again,
ideal
that's why we
client is.
start with know yourself and know your business, right? But once we get to understand where that ideal client is, it's, well, what do they do? Where do they live? What are their shopping habits? And then more importantly, that's why I try to jump into the whole marketing understanding. How are you reaching them? How often are you reaching them? How are you tracking the success of your marketing campaign, et cetera? Do you do something similar?
Yeah, so take a look at where they're getting their leads. If they've identified their ideal customer, are they putting themselves in places that they can be in front of them?
Yeah.
Um, whether that's networking or through email blasts or calls through LinkedIn or through Facebook, um, or however, as long as they've identified that. If they haven't, then that's a great place to start with
Yeah.
a lot of our clients, because if they haven't identified that, then we need to identify that and get to where they're in front of their customers and getting the details on the leads that are coming in.
All right. So increasing number of heads and feet through the door. Got it. Um, don't we then
It's kind of
immediately?
like prospecting, right?
Yeah. Well,
You can go dig a hole somewhere and there's no gold there. Well, then we need to go somewhere else and prospect and find where we're finding the gold. So
dig
that,
more holes.
but yeah, dig more holes. And if you're digging in the wrong hole, you're never going to get to the the gold. So go to the place where the gold is. So you got to prospect. And
Right.
if they haven't done that, then they need to get back to that drawing board 101.
So once we kind of evaluate that, the natural progression is then, okay, well, what is the likelihood that any one of those leads turns into a buying, paying customer, right? So then it's kind of the analysis of conversion rate, right?
Yep. So it's the
How,
quality of your sales team, right?
oh, okay.
That's where we
Perfect.
really evaluate whether we're doing the sales process correctly. Um,
So, one thing that I love doing is, especially when I'm working with a sales team, as in multiple sellers, I like to look at the efficiency of each seller and then correlate that back to behavioral traits, styles. We talk about DISC a whole lot, right? But if you're looking at a team, and then you're looking at the I let's call it efficiency or output of said team, it's really great way to kind of see, do you have like characteristics within certain sellers? Did you onboard these people at the same time? Did you onboard them at different times? Did you change your training process or your onboarding process at each point in time? But it really kind of helps you evaluate how you have changed your processes within the business versus the characteristics of each individual person, right? Do you do something like that?
yep. Yeah, it's evaluate, you know, and it can be broken down even as far as the verticals. Like if you have a guy that is really excelling in a vertical of selling the services of your business, but then you have a guy who's selling new machinery, we'll just say
Sure,
that. So
sure.
um and can be really good at that. Well, let's separate those two out, make the person very good at their vertical and keep
Yeah.
them where they excel, and identify the key characteristics that have made them your top seller. And then you can put the person into a seat that's with them that may have the same attributes, but may not be the best person selling for new equipment, but might be great at meeting with people coming in with service needs.
Yeah.
Um, and evaluating that. And once you can identify the best characteristics, you can also identify the sales process as well for each one of those, because it may be different.
All right,
Um,
cool. So, I mean, looking at those two pieces, right? Number of leads, conversion rate, what we're really trying to manipulate and change there is the number of paying customers, right? Brass tacks. Yeah,
yep. Customers
cool.
coming in.
So now we've got
Easy.
customers, and in theory, we can increase those customers. What do you look at
Yeah,
next?
we're going to be looking at revenue from them.
All
What
right.
are we getting?
Well, how
What's
are
our
how are we driving
average
revenue?
sale that we're
Okay,
getting?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
What's our average sale? So if look at the value of each one of those customers that comes in,
Yep.
and then the number of times that they come as a
All right.
customer.
So
So
basically, what you're saying is revenue equals customers times average sale times sales per period, right?
yep.
Yeah.
So the frequency.
Frequency, right? And so if you can manipulate any of those, either if you can increase and upsell and get a little bit more and increase the average sale price, or you can get customers to buy more frequently, well, the output is additional revenue, right? So once again,
If you want to double your sales for a month, then we need to double the amount of customers that come in.
well,
Or we could bring in maybe we bring in 25% more customers, or and then we convert those more, then we raise the average sale, maybe
yep.
we add on, and then we have them come back more frequently if we can.
I think what's becoming quite apparent to me as we kind of talk through this is as you start identifying the different levers, I don't know about you, but in my mind, a strategy forms always. It's like, okay, I think you're client X, you're really good at A, B, and C. You don't have that much information, metrics, you're not pulling that much data to be able to make informed, driven decisions around C or D. Let's start here. Is that something that you do also?
Yeah, yeah. If we're
Yeah.
not identifying and have, again, it's the baseline on every one of those, then that's where we got to start. We got to get that baseline of the average sale. If we don't know what that
Yep.
is, um, then we can really adjust that lever. You know,
So, I mean, do we have coaching modules that actually help address each one of those?
yeah, completely
One,
built
one or
around
many?
each many
Yeah, I know.
entire stack of them. I think
People
I get
always
you.
ask, what is your process? And to be honest, Mike, I think that's kind of what we're doing here is we're kind of walking through our process of how we evaluate clients, how we look at money, how we look at revenue, how we start to identify where things are. We kind of touched on the basis of, financial accounting and the overview of where people are at. One of those things that I really, really like to do is I like to blend the hard dollar figures with metrics around where revenue's coming from. I like to go categorize someone's book of business. And by that, I mean, well, I want to know geographic region. If you are in a central hub, for instance, I'm in Raleigh, right? Or just outside. There's all kinds of little pockets and areas all around north, south, east, and west. If you service the entire Greater Triangle area, I want to know where your highest revenue is coming from. I want to know what jobs are typically being taken in those areas. I want to know the frequency of those jobs. But that's the type of data that I want to track and I want to comb through someone's book so that we can kind of get a sense of, okay, these are your high return jobs, right? These are the jobs that maybe don't have such a high return and have a real high either overhead cost or labor cost, right? Point being, it helps you kind of assess where you should spend more of your time, right?
It's often brought up the 80/20 rule, right? I
Yep.
mean, that's one that we hear frequently, that, 20% of our sales take up 80% of our time.
Yeah.
We want to be selling to the 20% that make us the most money, that take the least
Do
amount
we?
of effort, right? Yes.
Yeah. Least amount of effort. Well, I'm really glad you said that because that's also something that we talk through a lot, right? Is all right, I want to increase my revenue, and more importantly, it's not just the revenue. They want to increase net profit, but they also want to work less. So it's like, how do you do that? That same evaluation that I think we just walked through helps people identify what gives them the most bang for their buck.
Would you tell a client to fire a customer?
I would tell a client, I don't know if I'd say fire. I would say you need to make a conscious choice to refocus your efforts in areas that have the most benefit to you. Whether or not you, as a business owner yourself, might choose to keep a lower revenue client on or not, I that's not my call, right? And I would never advise someone to fire someone else. What I would say is it's kind of a point forward statement, right? Um,
Yeah.
we are presenting you with data, and from this point forward, we have decided that you should focus and try to, tailor your marketing towards reaching these clients, this area, this job type to make you more efficient and optimized, right? It's not
More about
really about getting rid of
identifying and
one,
evaluating,
sure,
right?
right? But it's all about helping clients become more informed so that they can be the drivers of their business, right? Don't be so reactionary. We don't have to help everyone. We don't have to take on every client. And the sooner we realize what clients we want, the sooner we can really hone in on that niche and drive our marketing, drive our sales, drive our social media content, drive all that towards hitting those people. And then I think that's when you start to get a lot of the efficiency in the overall business, because once you get something laid out and really, solid, it's rinse and
Mhm.
repeat, right?
So the next part of the evaluation, what are we looking at? We're looking at cost
So
of goods sold, right?
yeah, I mean, because
And our
revenue's not cash dollars in the bank, right?
yeah,
There's oh, there's this thing called overhead. It's crazy.
yeah. So that's part of that evaluation that we're talking about with clients. We can look at the amount of costs that go into certain clients and certain projects or certain product lines even.
Yep,
And evaluate that. And if it's not a profitable product or service line
sure.
or client, then that's part of that evaluation process we just talked about.
Going back to that kind of region mapping that I was talking about a little earlier as I evaluate a client's book of business, that's one of the main reasons why I want to do that, right? Because if I have a differentiation in my cost of goods sold in area A versus area B, wouldn't it make sense to do or try to push more business in the area that has the lower COGS, right?
Yep.
I mean, a lot of this stuff, once you start breaking it down, um, becomes apparent really quick, but it's the how we go about doing this, right? Because it's not just like you grab a formula, you start plugging in numbers and poof, epiphanies, right? So revenue minus our cost of goods sold, that gets us our gross profit, right? Once again, is gross profit the end all?
We
What else?
need to know
What is
we
the
need
other
to know
lever
what
that,
our fixed costs are that we're
okay,
having.
right.
So
And so how do you kind of look at understanding what someone's operating costs are?
they hopefully they have it all in their P&Ls that they're collecting through QuickBooks. But
Yep.
if they aren't, they need to know what those costs are and figure out what their fixed costs are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into that.
I mean, that's just that's operating expense. What is your marketing budget? What is your rent? What is your own personal salary output,
Yep,
right? Known fixed
yep,
costs, right?
yep. What
So,
is your insurance cost each month? What are your, you know, all
yep.
those things. Keep the lights on,
And so
utilities.
once we get all those things listed, what I like to do is kind of look at some of where the high costs are versus the low costs are, identify whether there are any alternatives in any of those spaces, and then work with client X to go research the alternatives. See if there is a cost-effective solution that could drive down some of that operating cost,
Think of
hence
the simple cost
increasing. Yep.
that you can evaluate is your merchant costs. Something you should evaluate probably every year. You're paying a merchant fee to do transactions. If you can save even a 0.5% on every single transaction that you're going to do for the rest of the year, that's worth going and evaluating and finding that,
Yeah.
that lower, just a 0.5% can make a huge difference on your bottom line.
And I'm super glad that you said that, because what we've established here is there's six main areas of focus, right? There's number of leads, there's our conversion rate, there's our average sale size, there's the number of sales per period, there's our cost of goods sold, and then there's our operating costs. Those are kind of our six levers that you were alluding to, right? The best part is, and you just said it, really small changes in any of those areas can have a massive, massive impact. Now,
For a
let me
12
ask,
month period, it's incredible what a small change can do.
So let me ask you this, because this is one of the typical follow-up questions I get when we start explaining all of these levers. Do we have to change all of them?
No.
Okay. So you're saying that with really small incremental change in even just one area here, it can have a drastic impact on the overall, final bottom line for a business?
And yeah, and I would go as far to say is it's better to make a focus and make the change in a few levers rather than trying to make an entire
Exactly.
overarching change that could be too much to take on all at once. But let's identify ones that we can focus on that make a quick change now, and then we can work on the ones later and make adjustments there, but make the ones that need to be made now that can affect your bottom line immediately.
There's always low hanging fruit, right? Go after the low hanging fruit, but more importantly, put together a strategic plan to make a change, figure out how you're going to evaluate the outcome, the output of said change, and then always have one or two next steps in mind, right? If we start with looking at number of leads, getting more heads through the overall door, and that increases without any other changes, what is the output? Last week we kind of talked about um, how we understand value, right? That's a great way of saying it. By making a single change, if you increase your foot traffic through the brick and mortar door by 10%, what did that do for any of your other financial levers, right? And then one more change. Point being, it should be an iterative process. You don't want to change things too fast because then you don't know what change had the
Which
right impact, right?
or didn't have the right impact.
Sure. I mean, none of this
Because
is
yeah,
an exact science, right?
because if you're
There,
getting more feet in the door, but then your sales team's not closing, then we realize, okay, we've made the change that's improved, but then we've identified the next area. But if we've made both those
bingo,
changes at the same time, we can't identify or we can't narrow it down to the next thing that we need to focus into.
bingo. You identified the next area of focus, and now we have a new plan in order to address. And that's when you and I, as coaches, sit back and say, great, we're making progress. Now, let's start looking at X, Y, and Z. We go back into our massive stack and we start mapping out a timeline, time frame, and let's call it a delivery order of our modules, our criteria, our tools, so that we can help each owner progressively grow. And that's what it's about, right?
The three A's: awareness, action, and accountability from there.
Like you make it sound so simple. Why isn't it?
Well, because I'm going to walk away from this meeting and my phone's going to ring and it's going to be something else in front of me. But
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like the easiest distraction, but that is what happens if we're not making it our focus, our focal point,
Mm.
X,
Ooh, like what you did there.
then we're gonna miss that. And so that's where a coach is, and where I come in as a coach often is like, okay, we found this focal point, this area, this X. It's the number of leads coming in. Let's drill into that. And I'm going to talk to you about it and keep it
Yeah.
so that the phone, even though the phone is going to ring as soon as you walk out of here, but a week from now, it's going to be you and I talking about this same thing again to discuss it and make sure we are working on it.
We talk about the action items. We talk about what you did, what you didn't do. If you didn't finish everything, it's all right, well, why didn't you? What choice did you make to do instead? And how did that, aid or push us forward? Yeah, that's exactly how coaching works. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic thing when you can see that light bulb go off and people start to understand that, listen, it's an iterative process. It's a slow journey. You can't fix anything with a silver bullet, but as long as you're getting up every single day and you're making progress towards a goal that is going to better you, make it easier, bring in more people, etc., you've made progress, and that should be, well, applauded. Awesome. Well, listen, Mike, we're coming up on 25 minutes, and this was a fantastic discussion. Thank you very much for having it. We basically just walked through Brian Tracy's Way to Wealth principle, which is something that I know we all use quite a bit with our clients. So for those out there in social land who requested additional financial pulling back the curtain, hope this was helpful. Any parting words, Mike?
Oh, well, yes. Let's,
Come on.
really, it just stands out to me what small change and focusing on that change is.
Yep.
And that's why we're here as coaches. And that's what I love to see is to see someone focus in on a small change, if it's sales, if it's your books or whatever it is that you need to focus in on, get that focus and then see the change and growth is what everyone
Yeah.
wants when
You
they
know, the only
in
other
their
thing,
business and in life.
well said. The only other thing I think I'd probably add to that is I don't think that you can just jump in to the end. You can't just start at the end and try to identify, going after operating costs. It really is a process, and taking people from start to finish is what coaching is all about. And I'll say this really quickly. Let's say we went through every single module that we had with a client. Do you think that that business would be the same business at the end as it was at the beginning? So what do you do then? You restart.
Um,
You
yeah, of
restart,
course it's
right?
gonna get
The
going
business
again.
has changed. All the other variables and the parameters, um, the operating ecosystem, it all changed. Coaching never has to end. It can slow, and we can say we've given you all the necessary tools. Go off, implement, get back to me in 6 months, and let's go talk about how things are, right? You never lose these relationships. You basically just set people free and let them go off and execute and utilize all those tools that we just gave. That is what I love about coaching myself. Awesome. Cool. Well, then, Mike, I think we have officially wrapped up yet another episode of Coach's Corner. So, everyone out there in virtual land, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and a better weekend. And for Mike and I here at Focal Point of Utah and Focal Point of Cary, thank you all for watching, listening. Hope this was useful, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Take care, guys.
Everyone.
Bye.